Welcome back to the last bit of the mock-ups from Lord of the Rings that I had in my lecture. So here is the original. The track is called Return of the King and Grey Havens. And so here is my mock-up. All right, let's dig into this one last time. So, what did I do? Same thing as last time, dropped in the audio file, and voila. Here's the tempo track. Again, clearly not recorded to click. It's varying heavily between 60 and like 75. There's also some weird voice leading going on with this, where the basses are moving parallel to the melody in unison, and let's not dissect the arrangement right now. I just input the notes exactly as they were in the score that I have. So, first thing I did was the bass line. Technically on this one, I was debating whether I should start with the melody line, because everybody's playing in octaves in unison. But anyway, I started with the bass line. So you can see how I did the phrasing. It's technically 2-bar phrasing, but there's also an overarching 4-bar thing going on. So you want to see that reflected in the automation. By the way, again, everything done with the pencil tool, everything quantized. I feel like I need to insert a few more words here about the whole using the pencil tool thing, because I've seen that spark quite a few debates online. I did it this way because in a previous lecture, the students were asking if it's possible to do it this way, or if the lines really need to be performed. So instead of just saying that it works, I decided to prove that it works by doing it this way. Plus, this concert score is transposing and in all kinds of clefs, so, f that. I'm not gonna try and sight read that. So, for my own stuff, I usually do a mixture of playing and pencil tool, but I'm also looking into getting a graphic design pad so I can use a magnetic pencil to sketch into the piano roll. So kind of like writing with pen and paper, but straight into the DAW. I know one of my additional writers, he plays stuff in, but then he will correct it with the graphic design pad and with the magnetic pencil. So that's also a way to go. In any case, please stop shaming people or making them believe there's only one right way to do things. I've been in the room with enough composers to assure you that there's an equal amount of programmers and players, and both leads to the same destination. At the end of the day, a client doesn't care how you got there as long as it sounds good and it's delivered on time. And so this is the second half, which has slightly different arcs. The way to do this, the way I did this anyway, is I was humming the melody while I was inputting the automation data. So I would know where the phrase is going up and down, just so I could have this. And once you have one done, you're pretty well underway because everything else is derived from that first line that you do and the automation you put in there. So second thing I did, as usual, cello. They are actually playing the melody with everyone else at the beginning, and then they just do a bass line. Let's have all of them playing. That's what layering is for. Again, I just program these into one patch and then copy paste and make slight adjustments. You can see it's similar automation data. I changed it very slightly because it has these little upbeats into the phrase. And then here it's exactly the same automation data for the bass line. Something else you can see again is I put in little breaks into the melody after each phrase. It's a bit exaggerated, but sometimes MIDI needs that. It would be much more subtle in a real context. The point being that this would at the very least be a bow change, but I have a feeling they would probably stop and start again after finishing the phrase. You should ask a string player how they would play it. This is not in the score. There are actually very few phrase markings in the score, which is surprising. I would think that at least over each of these phrases there would be a phrase marking, but there wasn't. If you have studio players, I mean, they're gonna get it no matter what you write down. They will understand where the phrase starts and ends. But so I exaggerated this a little bit here. Now the great thing is the first half is all unison, so I just copy pasted that into the violas. There we go. This is an octave higher, but the automation data, as you can see, is the same. And then the second half is filling in the chords, but also playing counterlines to the melody, especially this bit. And so forth. And then another copy paste into violins too, which are probably playing unison to this, I would think. I don't remember. Let's take a look. Yes. And then this is filling in chords. Until here, you can see I pulled this up a little bit because this is a last counterline, actually, where the second violins take over from the first violins. So this has to be a bit more pronounced. Because the first violins are out at that point. So they have to be a bit more present there. And notice that I'm using mostly fast legatos because none of these excerpts, none of the three have portamentos or anything in them. Most film scores don't. People keep fighting me on that. And I'm like, listen to most modern film scores. They do not have slow legatos or something. They mostly have very fast legatos. And that's how players will play them by default, unless you tell them otherwise. So here's the first violin. Again, copy-paste of the first part, but up an octave. This is a very common orchestration technique to have the violins, violas, and cello play in 3 octaves. If you really want to bring out a melody in the strings, go for it. It's very difficult to do in MIDI. It always sounds a bit MIDI if you do it with, out of the box. But in a live context, it really soars beautifully. This really takes a lot of massaging to make that happen. And then in the second half, we actually have the first violins play the melody. And so forth. If I wanted these very short 16th notes pronounced, I could also very softly layer in shorts or tremolos. I didn't do this here because I thought it's fine. It's also doubled, I think, by some woodwinds, so it's fine. If it was just strings, I probably would have done that. But yeah, I didn't feel that was necessary here. So this sounds very beautiful. Again, note how I did put in phrase marks, breaks, where I think the players would naturally breathe and start again. Make it more realistic. So here are all the strings together. Yeah, so this is where I kind of find the arrangement a bit weird, because the bass line goes in octaves with the melody, which is kind of unusual. Normally you would want to have counter movement between the top line and the bottom line. But I mean, I trust Howard Shore knows his counterpoint and did this on purpose. What do I know? And you can see here how he makes a lot of room at the top for the violins, for the melody, keeps the chords around middle C and the bass line an octave lower, and he's going to fill in this gap with the brass. So he leaves a lot of room for the proper instruments. Just as a side note. Not that this matters for the mock-up, because we're not doing writing. We're just putting the notes in that someone else put down. So, next thing. Next thing that I put in was, again, the bassoon. Somehow I work my way from the bottom to top. You can also do it the other way around. Or completely different if you want. I mean, I find this the most logical. But you do you. So these are the bassoons. You can see this is a one-on-one copy-paste from the basses. And then I muted where they stop playing in the score. And so forth. And then the clarinets, I have no idea what they're playing. Probably the melody. Oh, and some counter lines. Right, I remember. They're doubling some of the horn lines, specifically the horn top counter line to the melody. So that's quite beautiful. And very common for clarinets to be mixed with horns. Bassoons also mix well with horns. They get a kind of wooden quality, but in a beautiful way. Kind of a, I don't know how to describe it. John Williams does it a lot too. So it's, and you find it a lot in classical music. So here's that, the clarinets. And then they also double this little line at the end from the second violins to bring it out more. Yeah, very helpful. Then we have the oboe, which covers some of the lines, not all of them. He clearly uses this as a color that drops in and out. So I've just muted all the notes that it's not playing from the violins. And then you have the flute, same deal, it's just playing some of the melody notes. It's kind of interlocking with the oboe a little bit and functions as a color change. And then if I want to balance the woodwinds, I would have to listen to all of them to see if they're really interlocking. So the loudness seems pretty accurate. The second clarinet is always a bit louder in Berlin woodwinds than the first. Note though, I am not on the latest version of it, so maybe that's fixed. But if you're on the old Contact version, second clarinet is a bit louder than the first clarinet. And then this is together with the strings. So the volumes seem accurate. You can hear all the woodwinds as colors on top of the strings, which is how this is intended to be. I mean, the strings very much take center stage in this piece. And then the brass. There's no percussion in this. So this only has horns and low brass in it. So let's listen to the horns. It's just filling in the chords and creating counter melodies. So here's that. And so what you really want to hear is this line. Na 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 na. That's the counter line to the melody, which is very pretty. And then this is just playing the bass line again. So the brass with itself sounds like this. And then everything together sounds like this. I did forget to talk about the harp, but there's nothing to say about the harp. Even that is quantized at like 16th notes or something. So yeah, just make sure the harp is audible, of course. But it's just a color. The only time you really want to hear it is at the end. Besides that, it's just playing arpeggios, so just make sure you can hear it in the background, you know. It shouldn't take center stage. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. I don't think I have anything else to say about this. Yeah, if you have any questions about any of these mock-ups, please drop it in the comments and I'll try to address it. I mean, you can see you can get very far from just having tempo changes and having your template properly set up. And then you're gonna be fine. Even if you quantize and, you know, even if you don't play in the lines and even if you draw in the automation, it can sound very gorgeous if you do it right and if you understand what an orchestra should sound like. So train those ears, know your libraries, set up your template, and you're gonna be okay.